between about 2001 up through 2005, there was a growing presence of hardened Chicago gang members that were coming out to Rockford and taking over the drug business. Word began to spread about this guy named Duck and members of the Titanic Stones.
I kept hearing his name Duck, that he was from Chicago, that he was putting on a lot of dope here in Rockford. He's just a young guy, but he had a real reputation. People were afraid of him, just a little guy. The talk in the street, informant information is that this group run by Duck, Titanic Stones, were trying to take over the drug trade in Rockford, and they were moving real strong.
When they arrived here in Rockford, there was definitely a power struggle, Chicago versus Rockford. We'd have our robberies, our shootings. There have been murders here.
Every so often, somebody comes into power. It's just like anything else in life, you know, any business or any, you know, something always rises to the top. It was an epidemic, especially what it was. They were shooting a lot of people.
We initiated a federal case. Did an awful lot of surveillance, following people, watching people, talking to informants. We started to see the pattern, the way they were selling narcotics was the same. He was using different locations in the city, renting houses. Normally he would have a lady rent the house in her name. Nobody would live there. They would just use it strictly to sell drugs.
The end game for us here was to take out the organization as a whole. The Rockford Police Department had executed search warrants at many of these drug houses and only gotten small quantities of crack cocaine or heroin, almost always heroin, and he was never there. He wasn't the one selling it. We were lucky enough to have a confidential informant who was providing us with a wealth of information and told us that she had been approached and asked if she would be interested in renting a house on behalf of Duck and the Titanic Stones.
Beginning of the case, I was working in the narcotics unit, and my brother was in the gang unit. And we were both working both angles of it. And Barry came to me one day and said, "Hey, man, I got an idea. Do you think this will work?" He told me that he had an informant, and the informant had been approached and asked to rent a house, and then the house would be used for a drug house. And they wanted to wire the house up with video and audio. And I said, yeah, I think we can make that happen.
This is where the house was. The house was donated to us. It was scheduled for demolition. That's the spot right there. And it was pretty much disgusting when we got it, but they were kind enough to just let us do whatever we wanted to do. We parked in this driveway and carried lots and lots of carpeting and junk inside.
Well, we chose a location because at the time, the targets that we're looking at were looking for an east side spot. This is our near east side of town in Rockford. They were looking for a spot that had alleys, that was pretty much hidden from the general traffic, but could be accessible to somebody that wanted to get in and get out.
It was boarded up. Every window, every door was boarded up. Inside, the carpet was rotten. The flooring was a mess. All the utilities were not functioning. We would come over in our undercover vehicles. We would paint carpet, do electrical work, plumbing, just totally redo the house. But we added things to it, video and audio.
Talking to our technical people, ATF's technical people, we determined in order to do what we wanted to do, we would have to hardwire the house to a listening post. And by hardwire, I mean we needed a cable run directly from that house to wherever we set up a command post / listening post. Fortunately, one day we were in a room talking and a sergeant from the community relations happened to be in there and he heard the problem and said, "I've got just a spot for you." Went out, looked at it, it was perfect.
The factory or command center that we used was an old model paint factory. From the third or fourth floor, wherever we were, we had a bird's eye view of the house looking north. And the command center was set up so that there was a monitoring room where you'd have 3 agents at 3 separate monitoring stations and then a supervisor in the room. And each of those stations monitored a particular room in the house at 1023 Kishwaukee. One for the kitchen, one for the dining room, one for the living room. Nobody can guarantee that after all that hard work that the Titanic Stones wouldn't just say we're not interested anymore, or that they would think something was up. So there were some tense days leading up to August 9th.
But when I took Doug to show him that house today, he loved it. He loved it. I'm talking about he fell in love with it. He said, man, call that motherfucking landlord right now and tell him you want it. He said it's low key, it's off of the back in the alley. It's entrance for the smokers to come in from the alley and nobody gonna see him. It's 2 ways to come in from the back way. He wanted it. We didn't even use the front door. He wanted it. He was like, tell him, yeah. So I called. I was like, Doug wants it. He said he wants it. I said he likes it. I said he loves it.
Finally, on August 9th, it worked out. And within a very short period of time, a couple of hours, the keys were turned over. And within an almost identical short period of time, they're moving in.
Bro, you gotta get out, man. I like this chick. Ooh, shit. Damn, bitches thought they was getting buzzed down around this motherfucker. What? Oh, my mama, they gonna be getting buzzed down every... Alright, come on, man. You tearing our shit up, man. Alright, you gotta run. Look. Alright. My dirty ass dumped that brown water. So that's the motherfucking rock of building inspector. Come on. What's up, G-Ball? Huh? Breakfast cook. You in, bro? Yeah. Oh, wait. Gotta turn it. Swing, bro. Yeah. Now swing it back the other way.
When we pulled up, it was like a regular little trap. It ain't look like nothing suspicious or nothing like that. The first time I saw it, I just looked at it as another trap. I mean, we had so many. It was crazy one day because the first time I ever went over there, my girl dropped me off. And when she was dropping me off, she said, baby, I've been staying in Rockford all my life, and ain't nobody never lived in that house. So the first thing I said, well, what the fuck does that mean?
You see furniture coming in, and Duck and Little Steve and Bradford Dotson and Ambrose Jones. They're carrying couches in, they're carrying chairs in, and they're setting up shop. That night, they're selling dope.
What's up, Shane? Y'all all together? Yep. What's y'all want? 40. 40 what? 40. You know y'all got one, y'all got to do one on
Yeah, that's what he said.
That's no problem.
It was interesting and I guess disturbing at the same time what the customer base was. And there were people from all walks of life. People who looked like they just got enough work at 5:30 and stopped at the drug house to get their heroin fix. People who clearly were well on their way to becoming heroin addicts. Young people, teenagers, people from all walks of life.
You'd see the soccer moms showing up in the minivan getting dope. You'd see, you know, the hardcore drug addicts. You'd see black, white, male, female, young, old, anything. It was just all over the place.
Let's see, bro. 360.
The investigation lasted approximately 6 weeks. To get 6 weeks out of it was more than we could have hoped for. Duck and a number of members of the organization drove into Chicago to obtain more heroin. They were under surveillance in the Chicago area when they became targets of a drive-by shooting. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a second vehicle pulled up alongside Duck and an individual started shooting. The agents in Chicago had to immediately take action, which required them to pursue the vehicle that the shots had come out of. Duck could see these cars suddenly come from nowhere. He put it all together right then and there. He knew he was under surveillance, and he suspected other things might be wrong back in Rockford.
Armstrong and Slick Cop just rolled past. He looked like his shit. Armstrong, Slick Cop.
He then placed a call that we intercepted in the dope house in which he warned the individuals there that he thought he was being followed by federal investigators and that they should get out of the house immediately.
They scrambled back to Rockford that night, Ambrose Jones in the SUV, and Duck, we later learned, in a taxi. That was when the jig was up, so to speak, and it was time for us to start making arrests, which is what we did on September 14th. After the arrests were made, there were 16 individuals charged. 13 of those ultimately pled guilty, and 3 of them went to trial. The defendants here received lengthy sentences. The leader of this conspiracy, Daryl Davis, received a 42-year sentence. And that trickled down to the other members of the conspiracy, and like Bradford Dotson receiving a 35-year sentence after trial, Montrell McSwain a 25-year sentence after trial. The sentences handed down in cases like this are draconian. 42 years for Daryl Duck Davis is a life sentence. He is going to be an old man when he gets out. When a group like Titanic Stones get to the point where they're that organized and are terrorizing the streets, you're left with no choice. Law enforcement is left with no choice but to take them off. He was simply too dangerous and ordered too many violent acts to leave out on the street.